The Cleveland Browns promised stability. What they delivered instead was a full-blown quarterback crisis, and the season hasn't even started. At the heart of it is a player who hasn't thrown a single NFL pass, rookie Shadur Sanders. He's not just another draft pick. He's a narrative. He's the Colorado highlight machine, the son of Coach Prime, the face of a social media storm. In other words, the kind of figure who can energize a franchise or tear it apart before he ever takes a snap. From the moment he walked into the building, the hype was nuclear. Jerseys sold out. National broadcasters built graphics and promos around him. Even veteran teammates admitted something about Sanders felt different. For a franchise that cycled through more quarterbacks than most teams have backup kickers, the hope was intoxicating. Maybe this was finally it. But then reality hit. Week after week, Sanders sat with a clipboard while Joe Flacco and the other veterans ran the show. On paper, it made sense. Protect the rookie, don't rush development. But football doesn't live on paper. It lives in locker rooms, film rooms, and sideline body language. And what players started noticing, what reporters started hinting at, was a growing disconnect. Sanders was carving up defenses in practice, while the safe options were sputtering under the lights. Now whispers have turned into tension. Receivers roll their eyes after missed throws. Younger players quietly back Sanders as the future. Older veterans wonder if the staff is playing politics. And in the middle sits head coach Kevin Stefanski, giving tight-lipped interviews about taking things week to week, while the locker room slowly pulls itself apart. This isn't just about a quarterback battle. It's about trust, leadership, and whether the Browns are willing to step into the future, or if fear will keep them chained to the past. From the day Shadur Sanders touched down in Cleveland, the atmosphere around the Browns shifted. Before he'd even thrown a pass in practice, his name was already the biggest one in the building. Reporters crowded around him like moths to a flame. National outlets turned him into a headline factory, and fans carried him as a symbol of hope. For a franchise haunted by decades of quarterback turnover, Sanders felt like a clean break from disappointment. It wasn't just the highlight reels from Colorado, though those were everywhere. The deep ball precision, the ice-cold pocket movement, the quick release under pressure. The tape screamed NFL ready. Pair that with the charisma of being Deion Sanders' son, and the media machine spun at triple speed. The Browns hadn't landed just a rookie quarterback. They had a storyline, a brand, and possibly the single most marketable player to hit their roster in years. Even inside the locker room, the ripple effect was immediate. Teammates spoke of his confidence. Younger players gravitated to him. Veterans who had seen hype come and go admitted there was something magnetic about the way Sanders carried himself. For many, it wasn't whether he could play, it was when he would take over. And that's what made the coaching staff's approach so controversial. Instead of channeling that momentum into the season, they clamped down. Stefanski preached patience, development, and learning from the sidelines. On paper, it was the safe strategy. But the reality? The longer Sanders held a clipboard, the more it felt like opportunity slipping through Cleveland's fingers. Because hype like this doesn't wait. It builds, it snowballs, and eventually it demands answers. And in Cleveland, those answers have been slow, cautious, and frustrating, which meant the same energy that once felt like hope was now threatening to become resentment, inside and outside the locker room. For head coach Kevin Stefanski, the plan seemed straightforward. Protect the rookie, ease him into the league. Let veterans take the bruises while Shadur Sanders studied from the sidelines. On paper, it looked like the smart move. Plenty of quarterbacks have benefited from sitting their first year, learning systems, and avoiding the pressure cooker too soon. But Cleveland isn't just any team, and Sanders isn't just any rookie. That's where the gamble starts to unravel. The Browns have lived in quarterback chaos for decades, a carousel of veterans, short-term experiments, and failed franchise guys. When Sanders arrived, fans weren't interested in patience. They wanted change. They wanted hope, wearing number 1, not another year of recycled safe options throwing checkdowns. Stefanski's decision to keep the rookie benched didn't read like strategy to the locker room or fan base. It read like fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of rushing the rookie. Fear of losing control if the hype outgrew his authority. That cautious approach may keep critics off his back temporarily if Sanders struggles, but it risks something far more damaging: losing the trust of his players. Because here's the reality. Athletes know. They see Sanders dropping dimes in practice, hitting throws the starter misses under the lights, and commanding huddles as if he's already been there for years. When that's happening daily, "he's not ready" doesn't sound like logic. It sounds like excuses. Now Stefanski sits in a no-win situation. If he throws Sanders into the fire and the kid stumbles, the blame lands squarely on him for breaking the rookie. But if he waits, he risks a fractured locker room, veterans tuning him out, and fans demanding change from the top down. The gamble isn't just whether Shadur Sanders can play right now. It's whether Kevin Stefanski can keep a team believing in him long enough to find out. And judging by the tension building week after week, that belief is disappearing fast. At first, the talk stayed quiet. A few receivers muttering after games about missed reads. A lineman shaking his head when drives stalled. Defenders, worn out after bailing out the offense, joking half-seriously about how maybe the rookie couldn't be worse. In NFL locker rooms, those little side comments matter. They grow legs, they linger longer than film clips, and pretty soon, they're evidence of a deeper issue: players no longer trusting the process. That's exactly what started happening in Cleveland. The starter was sputtering through drives, checking down, or missing wide-open throws. Meanwhile, in practices and scrimmages, Shadur Sanders was putting on a clinic: clean footwork, tight throws into coverage, composure in 2-minute drills. The things teammates can't ignore when they're on the receiving end. Word travels fast when a scout team quarterback starts making your first-team defense look average. The whispers turned into questions, and questions are harder to silence. Why wasn't Sanders even getting meaningful reps? Why was the coaching staff clinging to an aging veteran when the future was already sitting in their meeting room? And most importantly, was this about football or was it politics? Veteran players, the ones who've seen this movie before, can smell hesitation from leadership. When they see a coach choosing safe options while electrifying talent is wasting away on the bench, it creates doubt. They don't have endless years to waste. Their careers are short, their windows to win even shorter. And every week Shedeur sat, the perception grew. Maybe the Browns weren't actually trying to win right now. What started as jokes in the locker room evolved into a real divide. One group rallying behind Sanders, calling him the spark. Another group rolling their eyes, worried the hype would split the team apart entirely. And through it all, the one voice missing was Stefanski's, his silence fueling the tension more than any bad throw on Sundays. By mid-season, the Browns' quarterback situation wasn't just a coaching controversy, it was a locker room civil war. What started as whispers had evolved into clear lines being drawn. Teammates weren't just debating who should be under center. Their own sense of belief in the franchise was at stake. On one side stood the Sanders camp. Younger players, many drafted in recent years, gravitated to his energy. He looked like a modern quarterback, mobile enough to extend plays, confident enough to take risks, savvy enough to command attention. To them, Shedeur wasn't just a rookie, he was a lifeline. They saw him as the quarterback who could finally take this franchise out of the endless cycle of mediocrity. Every crisp throw in practice, every highlight clip that leaked onto social media only reinforced their conviction. This was the guy. On the other side stood the veterans, not because they doubted Sanders' talent, but because they understood how dangerous hype could become. They had seen golden boys come and go, watched media narratives build players up just as fast as they tore them down. For some of them, it wasn't about whether Sanders could play, but whether the coaching staff was equipped to protect him from becoming another casualty of Cleveland's dysfunction. Trusting the rookie meant more chaos if things went wrong. And these guys didn't want their twilight years wasted on a media circus. The split extended beyond talent evaluations. It was cultural. For Sanders supporters, he represented hope, energy, and a future worth gambling on. For cautious vets, he represented instability, the fear that the Browns were about to tie their entire identity to a 21-year-old who hadn't taken a regular season snap. And the silence from Stefanski gave the division oxygen. With no clear explanation, no transparency, and no leadership to pull everyone in the same direction, the locker room's factions hardened. Practices became edge-of-your-seat affairs. Sidelines buzzed with quiet criticism. Film sessions turned heavy with unspoken tension. What the Browns had wasn't just a quarterback controversy anymore. They had an identity crisis. And in a franchise already scarred by decades of failure, that could be lethal. If the locker room was already tense, the outside noise only poured fuel onto the fire. The moment Shadur Sanders arrived in Cleveland, he wasn't just a rookie quarterback. He was a storyline. Every practice clip became viral content. Every no-look throw, every sideline smile, every rumor about his status spread like wildfire across sports media. Fans didn't just want to see him play, they demanded it. Social media turned into a relentless drumbeat. Edits of Shedeur slinging dimes in practice flooded timelines with captions like QB1 loading and let the kid cook. Hashtags calling for Stefanski to start Sanders trended nationally after every disappointing outing from the current starter. Even rival fan bases joked about the Browns' stubbornness, asking why they'd bench their most exciting player while rolling out a system built for mediocrity. Mainstream media jumped in too. Cable shows debated daily whether Cleveland was hiding Sanders out of fear or incompetence. Analysts who normally disagreed on everything suddenly aligned. The Browns had lit a fuse they couldn't control. Each panel show, hot take, or viral clip didn't just influence the fans, it seeped back into the locker room where players scrolled through feeds and saw the same questions they were asking privately. And the impact was toxic. The more pressure built outside, the more Stefanski clammed up inside. His press conferences turned into cliché soundbites. We're taking it week by week. We like where Shadeur's development is. Platitudes nobody believed. Fans scoffed, players rolled their eyes, and the silence only made the speculation louder. By refusing to own the narrative, Cleveland lost control of it. What should have been a carefully managed rookie development arc had morphed into a full-blown circus, where every decision, or lack thereof, was magnified. The Browns weren't just fighting to keep their season alive anymore. They were fighting to quiet a storm that had already gone national. Kevin Stefanski now finds himself boxed into the kind of corner every head coach fears, the no-win dilemma. On the surface, his plan made sense. Sit Shadur Sanders, give him time to learn, and let the veterans manage the storm of expectations until the rookie is truly ready. That's the safe, textbook approach. But the NFL isn't built on textbooks. It's built on results, and results aren't what the Browns are delivering. Every loss makes the pressure to start Sanders louder. Every poor possession by the current starter turns into another round of headlines, memes, and hashtags. The fans know it. The locker room knows it. Even ownership is starting to feel it. And Stefanski? He's stuck between two doors, and both could drop him headfirst into disaster. Door 1. Play Sanders now. If Stefanski makes the leap, the city explodes with energy. The locker room likely rallies, veteran players sigh with relief, and fans finally feel like the Browns are leaning into the future. But here's the catch. What if Sanders struggles? What if the mistakes pile up, the bright lights overwhelm, and the Browns rack up losses anyway? In that worst-case scenario, Stefanski becomes the villain who caved to pressure and ruined the rookie before he was ready. Coaches have been fired for less. Door 2. Delay the move, keep Sanders holding a clipboard, and roll with experience. On paper, it keeps the rookie protected. But every week he doesn't play is another week of fractured chemistry, another drop in trust, another reason for veterans to check out and fans to grow restless. Too much waiting makes Stefanski look less like a strategist and more like a man paralyzed by fear. Eventually, patience turns into outright rebellion. That's why it's a no-win situation. Because the gamble isn't just about whether Sanders can succeed, it's about whether Stefanski can survive the fallout, no matter what happens. And so far, every sign points to mounting distrust. In a league that chews up and spits out coaches quickly, hesitating at the wrong time isn't caution. It's career suicide. This quarterback dilemma isn't just about who starts on Sunday. It's about the very future of the Cleveland Browns. Mishandling Shadur Sanders doesn't risk one bad season. It risks defining the next decade of the franchise, for better or for worse. The first and most obvious cost is development. Every snap that Sanders spends on the bench is a lost opportunity for growth. Timing with receivers, adapting to defensive disguises, and building chemistry under real pressure. These can't be replicated on practice fields. By delaying his game reps, the Browns aren't protecting their rookie. They're stunting his evolution, essentially hitting pause on what could be their long-term solution at quarterback. In a league where windows to win are brutally short, lost time is a luxury Cleveland cannot afford. The second cost is trust. Locker room fractures are already visible. Veterans wonder if leadership is prioritizing politics over performance. Younger players question whether this team actually rewards talent or just clings to familiarity. Once belief in leadership evaporates, it doesn't return easily. A divided locker room doesn't rally when stakes rise. It splinters. And if that fracture grows, it could poison the culture for years, pushing stars to demand trades or walk once their contracts expire. The third and maybe most damaging cost is perception. Fans already feel betrayed. Sponsors and broadcast partners who bought into the Sanders narrative are looking skeptically at Cleveland's indecision. Other free agents watching from afar see a front office unwilling to unleash its best hope. That reputation follows franchises, and it makes attracting future talent that much harder. And looming over it all is Sanders himself. He's not a faceless rookie. He's brand savvy, image conscious, and fully aware of his own market power. If he feels unwanted or mishandled, he has options down the line. Nothing haunts a city faster than the sight of its future star thriving somewhere else. So what's at stake? Everything: credibility, chemistry, and control of their own future. Mishandle Sanders, and the Browns become not just a struggling team, but a cautionary tale. At its core, the Browns' situation with Shadur Sanders isn't really about X's and O's. It isn't about whether he's memorized every page of the playbook or if he's built enough chemistry with his receivers yet. It's about leadership. It's about identity. And it's about whether Cleveland finally has the courage to stop playing scared and start committing to a future that could actually change everything. For decades, the Browns have been haunted by the same mistake: squandering potential. Draft busts, bad trades, coaching blunders. It's become part of the culture, part of the narrative other franchises laugh about. And now, right when they finally have a player who could rewrite that story, they're veering dangerously close to making the same old error. If the Browns keep sitting Sanders, they risk more than missing the playoffs. They risk alienating their fan base, fracturing their locker room, and even losing the one player who could define their next era. Because make no mistake, Shadur Sanders will be a star in this league. His talent, his poise, his charisma, all of it points toward a quarterback who was built for the spotlight. The only real question is where he shines. Will he do it in Cleveland, a city desperate for hope, or will he become another story of a young star succeeding somewhere else, while the Browns are left watching in regret? Kevin Stefanski's gamble isn't just about winning games in 2024. It's about whether he and the Browns as a whole can hold on to a locker room that's already cracking and a fan base that's already restless. At some point, hesitation becomes its own kind of failure. So here's the truth. The Browns aren't just deciding who starts at quarterback. They're deciding who they are as a franchise. Do they embrace the future, or do they stay chained to their past? Because one way or another, Shadur Sanders is going to rise. The only question is whether Cleveland rises with him or watches from behind as usual.